I guess to give you a bit of background, what is Coutts? So Coutts is a private bank and wealth manager. So we look after your entirety of your wealth. So from banking, lending, we do estate planning, creating wills, family charters, and then we do all sorts of advice and non-advised investments as well. So we really pride ourselves in being our clients' indispensable partner. So our main, I guess, thing that we look for is building that relationship with our clients, and we have a huge history. So we date back from 1692. We've always been on the Strand in London, so just opposite Charing Cross Station, and we started off as a goldsmith. We've got loads of, our brand is incredibly kind of looked highly upon, so we're lucky from that respect, and we've got a lot of heritage, which is great. But I guess you might have a view of Coutts. Certainly before I joined Coutts, I kind of heard of it, not a lot, and a lot of people might think that it's a stuffy old bank with not a lot of digital going on. So some of our clients that you might presume are our clients, and they are, would be landowners, bankers, execs, lawyers, so people in suits from corporates, some famous people, so actors, sports stars, footballers, etc. But I guess one of the things that is the reason why our team is being formed is we also have many clients that maybe you wouldn't presume would be a natural Coutts client. And these include people like singers, rap artists, YouTubers, vloggers, e-gamers, and then one of our biggest markets that we're really looking at, entrepreneurs. So just focusing on e-gaming for a second. So this is a huge industry where you can win millions and millions just in one tournament of playing like COD in a tournament. And who tends to play games? It's young people. So it's pretty new in the last few years industry to us. But actually, when you look at the kind of the people that, like, a 22-year-old e-gamer, there actually isn't that much difference to them and a footballer who we have maybe banked with. We've banked footballers for many years. Another group, obviously, I mentioned is entrepreneurs. So we love entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs love us because we can give them something that an ordinary retail bank can't, and that's connection. So we connect entrepreneurs with each other to help grow their businesses and also just get insights from each other. So that's one thing that they really look to us to help with. But I guess the journey of wealth over the past 10, 15, 20 years is changing so rapidly, and now more than ever a 22-year-old can be a multi-millionaire who has made their wealth from a video game, and as you can obviously imagine, their priorities are probably totally different to a 60-year-old landowner who has seen their wealth pass through generations before them in their family. So what do the last few groups I've just mentioned have in common? They're far more likely to be digitally active, and they're also more likely to have competitor banks, so Monzo, Revolut, who are obviously very far advanced in the digital space. So that means they have much higher expectations for their banking than maybe the 60-year-old landowner might. So Sean, Sandra, and myself, we're all part of the digital team of Coutts, making sure that we use user-centered design, and also making our client journeys in the digital space much more seamless. So I think Sean and Sandra will speak to you about the kind of process that we've gone through in the app and how we have gone about it, especially during obviously COVID, because we actually started building, designing the app, I think a week before lockdown hit back in March. So it's been quite a journey. But yeah, our CEO, he refers to us as the 300-year-old startup. So we've got the heritage, we've got the brand and the history, but we also want to be a digital player in the banking world, which is why obviously we're going about building a brand new app from scratch. So I'll hand it over to Sean.
Cool, thanks Ash. So yeah, hopefully everyone now has a bit of a better understanding around about like who Coutts is and what we do. And I kind of wanted to, although we have this 400-year history, I wanted to kind of focus on maybe the last 10 years and really just talk a little bit about our existing app, some of the history and limitations around that, before talking about what our clients think of that, and then giving you a bit of a sneak peek of what we've designed and what we'll be launching pretty soon. This is our existing app. I'll touch on these screens in a second, but I guess, believe it or not, this was pretty groundbreaking when it came out. The only thing was it came out in 2012. That was like when the first kind of launch was. And I guess to understand like the design and some of the limitations of the existing app, you have to kind of understand what was going on in 2012. So we had the Olympics, yeah, that was like a biggie. But other things were that 4G was like a brand new and innovative technology. So it was pretty new for people to use more than one app at once on their phone, which I think is like pretty mad. And further to that, apps in general were still like pretty new. So Apple, like their latest model was the iPhone 5, and we're now on to, the iPhone 10, 11 now. So we've come on quite a bit. And I guess a build on that is not only were apps new, banking apps were even newer. So the NatWest group, which we are part of, Coutts is part of the wider NatWest group, they had just launched their first ever banking app in 2011. So for Coutts to have released an app just a year later, that was like a really big achievement. But I guess, what does this mean in terms of the existing experience today? So some of the, I guess, eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that, yes, this is downloaded from the App Store, but it doesn't quite look like an app. And that's true because UX back in 2012 was very web focused. And our app at the moment is, accessed via the App Store, but it is pretty much a responsive wrapper. So if you look at that home screen navigation, that's pretty much a burger menu, which is within the app. So I guess what I'm trying to get to there is that native design wasn't a thing. So although people had their iPhone 5s, most people were still using Blackberries. So the kind of existing and typical design patterns that we use today in iOS and Android, they didn't exist yet. And our existing app today is still kind of built on that somewhat outdated tech. So not only the aesthetics in the front end, so we're still using burger menus, there's not a lot of kind of native interactions that can happen here. Also the back end is pretty dated, and that's kind of the cost of being first is kind of how we kind of like to think of it in a nice way. We had this app out really quickly back in 2012, but we're still kind of using some of the same code, some of the old outdated APIs. So at the moment, it takes us about 6 months if we want to release anything. And really that is kind of stifling to any sort of environment to kind of iteratively design and co-create and get stuff out there quickly. So I guess that's kind of from a tech perspective and a design perspective, like I could talk for ages and ages about the history and the limitations of these screens. But of course, it's always good to kind of hear from your clients and find out what they think. And maybe one place we can go to look at that is the App Store. So I guess starting with the most favorable reviews on the App Store, it kind of looks pretty good. Like I've kind of slated our existing app, but a lot of 5-star reviews here. But to me, there's a bit of a red flag, and you can kind of see that second one. Someone says that it's excellent once set up correctly, which kind of makes me think, why are you giving this 5-star review if you weren't kind of able to set it up correctly? And it goes back to the presentation we had earlier, like if the onboarding and the initial digital experience wasn't great, why is this person still giving a 5-star review? And I'll maybe kind of get into that in a sec. So starting with the most favorable reviews looks pretty good. If we then filter to the most helpful reviews, it starts to paint a different story. So you can see here it's maybe getting a bit more realistic, and we're starting to feel where that 2.7 out of 5-star rating is coming from. That bottom review kind of plays into what I was saying earlier about having these 6 months release cycles. So at the time of this review, Face ID very much established, but we didn't have it in our digital experience. So people are obviously like pretty frustrated that that expectation to have all the features of your latest device within your apps is there. So it was kind of a bit strange that we didn't have that there. If we then kind of filter by most critical, it paints a kind of even worse story, and you can kind of see this quite negative feeling that a lot of our clients have towards the digital experience we have today. So of course you should do, don't just go on the App Store. Like, we've also done a lot of research with our clients to kind of find out what their pain points are and what they want from a digital experience. But this review really stood out to me, and I think it really sums up the kind of state of digital today, or where it has been before we kind of started working with Coutts. So this review: great bank, but an awful app. 1 star by happy but disgruntled. So they say that they love banking with Coutts and their service in general. That said, this app is diabolically bad. It was stuck in 2007. Even other RBS brands have better apps. NatWest is outstanding. Coutts, when will you update your app and bring it into this day and age? And I think this is like, it's a bad review. It's 1 star, but I think it really reveals like a huge opportunity that we have in digital. At Coutts anyway, which is that we have such a strong brand affinity. Like, a lot of our clients absolutely love the brand of Coutts, and they love it despite the digital experience. And that's where the opportunity is, because we can try and flip that and kind of help these clients to love banking with us because of the app that they have, as opposed to in spite of it. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavor of where we're coming from and why we have this need to update the digital experience in the first place. So now I can give you a little bit of a sneak peek of what our new app is going to look like. So just as a disclaimer, these are work in progress to start with. But maybe looking at our first screen, so our home screen. So as you can see, we're going to be able to use native design patterns, which is great because it means we can actually design for the devices that people are going to be using, as opposed to putting burger menus in, which are really, more for on desktop devices. We can design natively for iOS and Android. A big thing you might...
Burger menus, we mean those when we see those 3 lines stacked up, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So the kind of, like the little... I don't know why. I think in UX we have a lot of like food-related terminology. I don't know if we're just like a hungry discipline, but yeah, we're able to use stuff like you see at the bottom. We have, it's very, very standard now. Like we have this kind of little bit of navigation at the bottom. But probably the main thing that stands out to you is just like the color, which sounds like really basic, but we've recently had a brand refresh, and we're able to capitalize and use that within the new digital experience. And we're able to do that due to things like design systems. So again, back in 2012, design systems probably didn't exist, not at all to the kind of level of complexity that they can today, or even subtlety. And it means that, instead of just having 2 kind of block colors that you work between, we can have a lot more nuance that kind of flows throughout the app, which just leads to like a much nicer kind of aesthetic experience. So this is going to be our home screen, and you can kind of see some of the different things that our clients might have with us. So banking, borrowing, investing. We also do something called crowns. That's basically like Amex points for our credit card. And the little eye icon you might see at the top right, that's a privacy mode. So in testing, we've kind of found that, and I guess this is like another kind of really interesting thing working for a private bank and high net worth clients. Yes, they want to do their banking on the go, but they don't want people looking over their shoulder and seeing that they have, I guess, like a £4 million mortgage when they're on the tube. So there's little things that we're trying to build in to the experience, which will appeal to our kind of high net worth clients. Some other things that we're going to have, really standard, but card management. This is just like kind of a standard pattern now. You can, I think Monzo kind of led the charge for this, where you have the visual of the card and some actions underneath. So yeah, we can take inspiration from startups, and I think that's, working in the financial sector, one of the great things about fintech is you do have so much inspiration you can draw from. But yeah, so we'll be able to have certain things like that within the app. So this person, they can manage their I think this is a credit card, yeah. So locking, unlocking, replacing, and credit limits and things like that. And the third thing, payments. So probably the top thing people are going to come to our app to do. You might remember from a few screens back, they would have to go into a burger menu to find like a, kind of the menu at the top to kind of filter down to try and find the payment button. But we can, as I said earlier, because we're designing natively, we can design for the device people are going to use. So using more of this space on the screen, having two really prominent actions at the top for transferring money and sending money. And then also some other actions underneath for different types of payments, such as international payments or standing orders and stuff. And I think actually, the thing I find most exciting about this screen is that it's just the start. So we've already kind of designed what the next version of this is going to look like. And that's really nice because it means that as a business, we can move more towards this kind of, this culture of iterative design, which means, you can put something up on your website, test it, and then you can change the design, which it's quite a big cultural change. I think in banking especially, people tend to think in terms of projects and delivering the most perfect product for the set timeline. And then that's it, the money dries up and you need to move on to the next project. Whereas, it's going to be it's a living thing, really, the app, once it goes live. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, for day one when we launch, we're going to have a much better and improved experience, but it's also, it's day one, and we'll have many, many days afterwards to update and continually iterate and improve the designs that we have. So I've kind of gone through that there. So hopefully that'll, I guess, you got from Ash a bit of a history of Coutts and who we are. And hopefully from me, you've seen a little bit of the journey we've been on in the past year. So what our existing experience looks like and where we're heading. So I'll now hand over to Sandra, who I guess will talk to you a little bit about how we've done that and talk a bit more about human-centered design.
Thanks, John. Exactly. So you've seen the before and the after of the Coutts app. So what I would like to cover today is the middle bit, the journey, how Coutts actually moved through, an old app to the new app and tried to become human-centric, but also how to do that in the global pandemic times. But before we jump into the topic, I would like to actually briefly cover what human-centered design is, why it's important and how it's usually done. So human-centered design is an approach to problem solving where the end user is at the core of every step in the process. So for us at Coutts, all those different client types that Ash mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we actually think about them in every step of the process when we work on any project, really. So what being human-centric actually means? That means understanding your customers really well, who they are, what problems are they facing, how are they feeling, do they have any special needs? And then designing the solutions for those customers and actually testing the solution with the real customers. That's really, really important. And finally, if after testing you don't really get the result that you wish for, or you need more information, you repeat the process again until you arrive at the solution. So the human-centric design process actually starts with the research. And that's the first step in the process, where you try to understand your customer really well. You also try to understand what problem you're trying to solve, and also collect any other relevant information. You then move into the synthesis, where you try to make the sense of all the information you collected and start ideating solutions. And once you have a few potential winners, you start prototyping them and testing with the users. The whole beauty of this process, it isn't linear. It actually, you can go back to previous step or even go back from testing all the way to the research, because this way you not only understand your customers better, but you also iterate your product quite a few times, which will result in a better solution. So now that we have covered what human-centered design is, why it's important and how it's usually done, the big question is actually how to remain human-centric in the global pandemic times. And Today, we would like to share our experience in building a new app during lockdown and what lessons we have learned from that. So basically at Coutts, we have this setup where we engage with our clients on a regular basis, and we test our ideas, or maybe we even co-design the features together. And this is called Digital Client Steering Group. So obviously, being client-centric means meeting your clients as often as possible, and face-to-face is currently not an option. So how do we remain client-centric during these times? Working together with the client experience and research team, we actually had to find a new way of moving the face-to-face into the digital space to continue designing really meaningful experiences for our clients, but also in a safe way for clients too. So while we design and build our solutions the same way as we used to, using Sketch and InVision to prototype, we actually turn to online tools to test our solutions, and those are UserZoom and Mural for co-designing online. So usually what happens in those sessions is that we test our ideas, and if we don't find, information that we're looking for, or we need to dig a bit further, we repeat the cycle as many times as need to. So what does the usual testing session look like? Well, we would have a research moderator engaging with our client using the UserZoom. We would explain how the session is going to be run. We would then share the links to our prototype or the online co-design space using Mural. The client would then share their screen. They will complete the task, and at the end, we would have some time for discussions or questions. So what we actually found with this approach is that it's actually really efficient and productive. Even during lockdown, we managed to test quite a few core journeys of our new app and the features. And after that, we made a big amount of iterations. So this hopefully will help us to create a more intuitive and meaningful experience for our customers. But the biggest lesson that we have learned is that human-centered design is more important now than ever. If you think about it, all the global companies facing these challenging times, they were forced to move their products and services to the digital space. So what does it mean for our customers? Their expectations are getting higher. What we need to do is make sure we not only catch up with their expectations, but we exceed them. And how do you do that? You have to, of course, test your products as frequently as possible and do that remotely. Finally, I think inclusivity is key in remaining human-centric during the pandemic. And inclusivity, I don't only mean the end solution, that of course, but also your approach to problem solving. So for example, some customer segments might not be very confident in this new way of working. They might not be used to the interface, or they might even have some problems in general with technology. But by including them in the process and the design and creativity and the design thinking, we actually can uncover some really interesting insights about them, or even special needs that they have. And using that information, we can then design really intuitive experiences for them. So hopefully that by sharing our experience and the lessons that we have learned, we have inspired you to remain human-centric, no matter the times that we currently live in. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Ash to talk about our future plans and vision.
Sandra spoke a lot there about how we interact with our clients, how we test, research. And I guess the big thing for Coutts is our team is still relatively new. Our team is not even 2 years old. So our main purpose, I guess, is to really continue to embed the user-centered design culture across the entirety of the business, to get all of our client journey teams on board with us, working closely with us. Also, obviously, I mentioned at the beginning, we're growing the wealth and affluent business as well. So it's how we can run a personal service first bank and a digital bank together. And I guess the big thing for us is, yes, Coutts is always going to be personal service first, digitally enabled, but this app is really giving us the opportunity to give that digital enablement. And for the clients that do want to do digital things, they actually now have the opportunity to do it. And some of the other projects we're working on, so we're really working hard to do a lot more purpose, so meaningful work. So we're hoping to set up a climate portal for our clients to educate them, give them a help, connect them. We, including obviously the app, we're also digitally enabling our frontline staff. So all of our bankers and wealth managers will have a much more digital capability. Currently, they use a lot of currently, as of before COVID, they used a lot of paper, but we've rolled out iPads to all bankers. We're creating like a mini CRM tool that's going to link with the app eventually, just to make it much more effortless and seamless for the clients, and obviously give our frontline a lot more time. Instead of preparing papers and documentation, they can actually have a lot more time with contacting clients. So yeah, it's a super exciting opportunity. So thank you for listening.